Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Madeline. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at Cohere on the Cohere For AI team. I am honored to be supporting our community and to be supporting this session facilitated by community members Jen and Jonas, who have taken the initiative to invite this panel of independent researchers here today for what I'm sure will be a lively discussion about this work. Without further ado, I will invite you to enjoy the panel. If you have questions that come up, feel free to put them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And Jen, who is hosting the panel, will integrate them into the line of questioning as makes sense to help everything flow smoothly. And we hope that you enjoy the conversation. Jen, over to you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jen. I'm a PhD student at IST Austria in my third year. And I'm really excited to be hosting our panelists today, along with my co-host Jonas. And I guess to start off, I'll ask all the panelists to introduce themselves and say a little bit about your journey as a researcher. So let's start just in the order I see on screen. So Daniel, please.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel D'Souza. I work as a senior data scientist at ProQuest. Apart from my day job, I work as an independent researcher in the area of interpretability and explainability. I've been doing that for about 2 years now, and I've been fortunate enough to be affiliated with Mcmilen, MLC, and Cohere For AI now. Yep, I'm very excited and honored to be part of this panel.
And then Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily McMilin. I am a senior software engineer at Meta. And like Daniel, on the side, I do independent research. I am currently mostly interested in causal inference and applying it to large language models.
And then Stephen, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Kolawole from Nigeria. I am a final year computer science undergrad, and I do independent research. Yeah, and I'm affiliated with Kgomo Collective and recently with Cohere For AI. Yeah, I also do a little bit of engineering by the side. That's how I do my bits. Yeah, and I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you. And then finally, Oreva, please.
Hi, everyone. I am Oreva. I am a second-year PhD student at the University of Washington, where I work with the NLP group. My research is focused on model explainability and interpretability. I am also interested in making multilingual models accessible to people, irrespective of like where they come from, their race, whatsoever. I also work independently with Mcmilen on like some research projects. I'm very happy to be here. Yeah, thank you for that.
All right. So I guess to kick us off, I want to ask a little bit about sort of independent research organizations. So several of you are members of independent research consortia. So Mcmilen came up a couple of times, and also I think the ML Collective and now Cohere. Could you please share how you sort of got involved and what has the experience been like for you?
I can go first. I actually found Mcmilen because of Twitter. I liked a funny tweet, and it turns out it was Jade Abbott, and that's how I got into Mcmilen. I was on their Slack, and one day Sebastian Ruder pasted in a link to a request for plots call for MLC. That's how I got into there. I think my experience has been great because I think the vibe around Mcmilen was, as long as you can contribute even a little bit, whether it's even annotating like a single line of data, you are a part of this. And that is testament to the fact that the project that I was on is has like 60 authors on it, which is great. And MLC was a little different because it was a smaller group, but then it gave me a lot of experience in leading something. So yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah, for me, I think the funniest thing is that I also learned about Emma Collective from a newsletter from Sebastian Uda. Yeah. So yeah. So but I'm familiar. I've been familiar with Masakani. I mean, I'm an African doing research, so I think every African researcher probably knows Masakani. Yeah. But I wasn't very inclined towards NLP. So yeah, I didn't find Masakane very useful for me at that point. Yeah. So when I received the newsletter from Sebastian Ruda, actually he talked about Masakane, Elisa AI, and then ML Collective. Yeah. Elisa AI is also focused on building large language models in an open source kind of way. Yeah. So since I wasn't interested in NLP at that moment, so I didn't bother with Masakane or Elisa AI. So I joined them on Collective, and I was working on a project there, and I presented. Yeah, the feedback was really great, and the encouragement. Yeah, so I decided to make it a full-scale research project here. So in terms of the experience generally, I think it's useful in the sense that I get to have feedback on my work. I think computational resources is also a huge factor. Yeah, because if I used to train on my Colab and you exhaust that pretty fast. I mean, if you're running on GPU, so yeah, I got my first compute grant for Melbourne Collective. Yeah, I received that while writing the paper. Yeah, and then it's almost like a regular research lab, even though I haven't been part of one, but I assume that that's how a research lab works like.
Yeah, for me, so I discovered Masakane when I attended the Deep Learning in Durban in 2019. I think then I had worked on a project, I think machine translation for Pidgin with my co-author, and I presented it there, and I met Jade, and she was really excited about the project, and I think she mentioned it and tweeted about it, and then I joined the Slack group. And I think it was just cool to find like-minded people that wanted to work on technologies for African languages. And there was like little to no barrier to entry, right? Like you could come as anything. You could come as someone with no expertise, and then you'd still be able to work with people. Yeah, so it was really cool. It was really great. The experience has been great. The experience has been great. Like the progress of the community has been so, I don't know, it's been so good. There's been like a lot of work, and I guess like there's been so much value in the work like done at Masakane over the years. Like there's been like new data sets, like new models. Yeah, I just liked the like little or no barrier to entry for anybody. Yeah, like a lot of like people, a lot of us like built our careers or like started out from like just like working on projects in Masakane or just contributing to projects in Masakane. Yeah.
And Emily, I guess you're working independently. So, you know, a couple of the other panelists kind of brought up the support that they've gotten from the community. Like, where do you get your support? What happens? How did you learn to do, causal inference for machine learning?
Yeah. So most of my recent work is unaffiliated, mostly I'd say like accidentally, because it came out of a project for a job application, and I didn't get the job, but then I realized, okay, I should maybe try to take this somewhere. And a workshop came about that was just almost exactly the same as my research. So I had about like maybe less than a week to kind of convert this project into research. I didn't have time to rope anyone in, but throughout, sorry for the noise in the background, throughout the MLC collective has been super supportive. Roseanne and Jason from the collective have like you know, I've given research talks to them, and I've gotten their feedback, and they've been like supportive in regards to like just the process, even how open review works. So I definitely say like I'm here today because of them, because I wasn't even kind of aware of this field of independent research before I was introduced, I think probably via Twitter, to the MLC, and I presented some of my one of my early projects. I wouldn't call it research, but an early project in their first Open Jam, and then I became part of the community through that.
Thank you. And I guess now a question for everybody. So you're all published authors. So what part of the whole scientific process, you know, from thinking of an idea, finding collaborators, actually doing the research, writing, and then trying to get it published, like, do you find the easiest, the hardest, the most interesting, and why? And feel free to just jump in.
Okay, I can go. I'd say coming up with research ideas could be really daunting. Like, it's quite easy to come up with like random ideas, like to come up with ideas. Like, I think one of the cool things about working in NLP is that like we all speak like a particular language. Like, we interact with language every day. We interact with people, we interact with things, or voice technologies or language technologies or whatsoever. So there's always a problem. There's always a problem. I think personally, you just find like problems almost every day. Like, you see problems with things, you see how things break. You talk to your parents, and then you see how they struggle with language technologies, or like, yeah, whatsoever, or friends, or yeah, whatsoever. So like, there are like lots of ideas. There's always like ideas coming up. But I think one of the most challenging things is figuring out like what to work on at a certain time, figuring out what's a high risk project and what's a low risk project, whether it's worth it to work on a high risk project, because you're scared that it might be too like hard for your current expertise, or you're scared that you might get scooped at some point. Yeah, so coming up with ideas could be great, but just deciding what to focus on, thinking about what would move the field in the right direction, of course, could be like very daunting, because you don't want to work on something that is tangential to what other people are working on, because you want people to care about your research, you want to care about your papers. Yeah, I guess writing too I'm trying to get better at writing. Writing too is not very fun, because you just get lost in like running experiments, seeing results, and you're like, yeah, I've done it. And then it comes to telling your story. It's gonna be very hard, because you want people to appreciate your work. Yeah, so you have to like think of better ways to tell your stories, because you could do like a very great work and people do not understand, or people do not care about it. Yeah, so I would say coming up or deciding on what to work on at a particular point in time, and also telling your story, could be very challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I second that. I think for me, it is, I think, so I love to code. So for me, trying out new things is addictive, actually. And the writing bit, I think I've been fortunate enough to be in groups where I don't have to take the lead on that. But I think what I've maybe figured out in my projects is that unless you're part of a research group, it's hard to really think of how to tell the story. Like, you may have the results, but there are 10 different ways to like convey it. And how do you really think about success and failure? Like, before I did research, if an experiment failed, it failed, and that was the end of it. But what I've since learned is that you have to question why it's failing. Do you expect it? Is it failing for a certain modality? Can that be a new paper in itself? So I think these are the kind of ideologies that I'm trying to kind of get on board with. I think that is challenging for someone who's never been in a research role. So I think that is where I've learned the most, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think similar to Daniel, I feel like I get a lot of intuition from coding and experimenting, and that informs so much how I then want to like tell the story in the paper. But it is really difficult because when I think I have a result that's perhaps interesting, like there's a very cautious way to tell it. And then there may be like a way that is maybe more pushing what I think is the correct narrative and what I think would maybe be like more interesting to people. But it is then difficult to come up with maybe like the mathematical background that papers, you know, in our field require. So that's like, and I think it's similar to also that risky question of like how risky do you want to be in actually putting out this explanation to your empirical results, which are like undeniable unless there's a bug in your code. You have these empirical results, there it is. But like how much do you want to like back that empirical results with an explanation that is that you know is maybe what I think is most compelling, but someone else could perhaps really easily shoot down with a cutting peer review. So yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, I agree with what Emily just said. Yeah. Personally, I would say the easiest part is maybe when you announce on Twitter that the paper got accepted or you put it on archive. Yeah. Okay. For me, the hardest part is always the idea part. Yeah. It's I don't know, probably because I'm an early career researcher, but coming by idea that I really love and want to work on is a little bit hard. And let's say I've been doing literature for a while, and I finally found a work that interests me, and maybe on subsequent reviews, and realized that that particular work has been done by somebody else already. So, yeah, coming by ideas, I really like, at a stressful part for me. Yeah. In terms of easiest, aside putting your work on Twitter, I would say for me the coding part is more related because I mean I'm coming.
Stephen, I think you froze.
Writing and debugging. Oh.
Just for about 10 seconds.
Oh shit! I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
No
Okay. So I was saying that. Oh yeah. I was saying that the easiest part, aside writing and putting it on Twitter, would probably be the coding aspect because I come from a very strong programming background. Yeah, so it's easier for me to fall into that very relatable youth routine of writing and debugging. Once I'm very good with once I'm very solid with the research idea, then writing out the code and debugging is something that is right there in my soul. Yeah. So I sort of like that process better. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. I think I also I struggle with storytelling a lot in my writing, so I found that like super relatable. I wanted so all of you guys work to some extent on natural language processing, which is quite expensive often to do research on. So how has it been to actually try to find the computational resources you need to do your work? And also as a related question, like it's getting more and more expensive, I think, not even every year, like every week as the models get bigger and bigger. So how do you kind of see the future of the field and the opportunities for independent researchers?
Oh, I can go. Yeah, so I'd say I've been fortunate to like collaborate with Masakani. We've been fortunate to like get like cloud credits from Google, I think some other organizations. And I've also been fortunate to work with people that were able to like for example, I'd worked with Sarah and Julia like twice now on 2 different projects, and I was fortunate to like get like Google credits from them. But I'll say it's incredibly hard for like independent researchers because you're very limited. I said before I started like working like with GCP, like I just used to like use like Colab, and then Colab, like there's very little you can do, right? With like big models now, yeah. So it's pretty hard. I'll say it's pretty hard for like any independent researcher except you are like affiliated with like this like grassroots organizations now, like Mcmilen, MLC, Cohere For AI, and all that. With respect to compute, or with respect to like language models getting bigger and bigger, I think they will continue to get bigger because like there's so much data, right? There will always be data. Yeah, people use. I mean, probably like less quality or more repetitive data because human beings like are very repetitive. But I think one thing that I'm interested in is like developing like parameter efficient models. So like I've done some work previously on like model compression. Yeah, so I'm interested in like parameter efficient models. So like just getting, so not only like providing like users of technologies, like providing access, but even like independent researchers or researchers that do not have a lot of compute, just helping them like bridging this gap between or like very large language models and like smaller models that they can like play with or do stuff with. Yeah.
Yeah, I think similar to that, I think in terms of resources, I've also been fortunate to be working with people that have had access to this. I'm also lucky that my workplace does allow for some use of compute to try things. But I think in terms of what to expect, I think I'm behind the camp where I think retrieval-based models will sort of come in and then cure this large language model debate. So I don't see models growing beyond a certain point. With respect to, sorry, just give me a second. Funding and things like that, I think being an independent researcher, I think the only way to do it is through groups like Cohere, Mcmilen, and MLC. But in terms of compute, I think what I'd say is it's also, I think there's a lot of education lacking in terms of how to stretch your computes, right? Like $1,000 might be extremely useful if you know how to use it efficiently, which says something like what's the library, FFCV, right? Like you can train the models much faster, much cheaper if you know of it. But if you didn't know of it, you would use it up in training it for days on end, and then you would waste that. So I think there's a lot of education lacking there as well, where $500 might be enough, or it can be a drop in the ocean. So yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I'd say initially I had to notebooks, so which always insufficient for my use cases. Yeah. Then I found them collective every single time I've needed computational resources for my work. Yeah, I request for plans from MLC for that. Yeah. And concerning the future, personally, I would say independent research as of now might not be what it is, maybe 2 years or 3 years ago, right? Yeah. But now we have communities that foster this kind of development that actually encourage this kind of research, because it means you don't necessarily need to be big corporation or be in a part of the world, for you to do this research. So, and I think that's a really big possibility. So, in terms of the future, might probably have more communities like this moving forward, or maybe more people might actually try to get into research via independent research work. Yeah. But of course, there's still going to be that barrier, in getting jobs as researchers, right? Because initially you probably need a PhD or an equivalent, for you to get research roles. Yeah. So maybe that might be something that might need addressing sometime later in the future.
Yeah, and for me, I'm very fortunate to have access to resources to like pay for most of the services I want to use, but I also have found like a lot of low-cost services that I feel like are they almost like inform how I do my research. So I just was listing some of them. So I think like many people, like I use Colab Pro, and then I will, if I really need like extra resources, I'll do the Pro Plus, and you can prorate it, so you can just use it for a day and then get rid of that service, and they won't charge you for the full month. I use Jarvis Labs AI if I need like a server access, and they also they have like a really low cost rates, and I think they're out of the Jeremy Howard's I just forgot the name of his community, Fast AI community. And they're very flexible in terms of like how they charge. You could just freeze an instance and bring it back up again later. And then I use Hugging Face, their free service to host like all my model weights and data sets. So like as soon as I'm done training, I just like, I just use it automatically gets pushed to Hugging Face. So I don't even have to deal with the cost of storage or anything like that, although it does obviously use a lot of internet resources to push all that. And then in the way it like informs my research is like I do things like I use BERT, for example, instead of GPT, because I try to have everything that I do runnable on a Colab, so that I can like share the research with other people and they can see the demos. And it's just so much harder to train a GPT on a Colab. And then other things is like, let's say I'm trying to do something at the language modeling level, instead of like maybe doing something like the mass language modeling objective at the token granularity, where you have like that soft max over the entire vocabulary, which takes forever to train on Colab. I'll see if I can like recast the problem in something where maybe it's like a binary, or it's just like classification at the token level. So you only have to do the soft max over like 2 things or 3 things. So in some ways, like those constraints are like helpful in making the problem I'm trying to solve like more I guess more constrained in a way, and like narrowing the search space of all the possible problems that I would like to work on into some that I can like iterate quickly on.
Cool, thank you very much. I think we have a question from the audience, so I'll let Jonas ask it.
Oh, right. Actually, it's not from the audience. It's just a question I had. So that's okay. I would assume that working on a project like Masakani is a bit of a cutting edge, in that many organizations aren't really looking at African languages. And also working on causal AI is also something that is cutting edge, because most researchers are not really looking at that space. So I guess I'm wondering, what are the bottlenecks that you actually find in working on these cutting edge, bleeding edge technologies? I know that, for example, David worked on the Masakani named entity recognition project. I'm wondering, what are the bottlenecks? Is it data? Is it finding the right experts? So yeah, I think this is for the panel.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of answered it with the question. When we started the project, I remember I was the second one on the project after David. And what I think the challenges that we faced were just kind of running the tool, trying to figure out how to support African languages. Also, the lack of data sets. So there wasn't any prior work, right? So I think that was the biggest challenge when it came to the Masakane project. Yeah.
And for Emily, I'm curious, because with causal AI, it's also very niche, and we have some few papers here and there. DeepMind also released one recently about presence. I'm curious, how do you approach that kind of research, which is not very common?
Yeah, I have found like a couple of resources that I feel are really intuitive. And I actually, like, in my acknowledgements in the few papers I've had published, I like thank them because I feel like more people should be aware of them. So there's maybe I shouldn't list them all here, but yeah, like Judeo Pearl has put out actually quite a bit of like stuff, and even just his book of why is amazing, and it reads like popular science, but it actually has like so much of the actual fun mathematical underpinnings and foundational underpinnings in it. So I think, yeah, it is super niche, but in some ways that almost helps because it's really concentrated in terms of the body of work that you need to kind of like absorb in order to be able to start contributing. So it's almost like actually a huge asset to researchers in that area, and that you quickly get up to speed on these topics and then start contributing.
Kind of a related question, I guess, definitely for the African languages, but also for the causal inference. So so do you find that it's become kind of more of a mainstream interest over time, like especially in the last few years? And are you getting kind of like more recognition, more acceptance of this being an important, valid mainstream area of research?
Yeah, I mean, for African languages, yeah, I would say like, yeah, very much so. There has been like increased interest rather in like working on like African languages. Now people are funding data curation projects for African languages. Like a lot of like recent like multilingual language models have included like, I mean, African languages like in their training data. So I would say like there's been like an increased interest in like yeah, over the years. Yeah, and then there's been, I mean, now we have like we call like shared tasks for African sentiment analysis, for instance. That's something that one would never have thought of like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Yeah, so there's been so much progress. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to buttress what Oreva said. Yeah, I haven't really worked much on languages, but I think that part is right. You know, maybe Masakane might have been the biggest driver in this, but there's been lots of attention focused on languages. I mean, low resource languages in the African space. Yeah, especially most of the NLP researchers, especially those from Africa, might have worked on low resource languages at some point. Yeah, yeah. These days there are a lot of funds being generated, you know, to support data sets creation. I think there's Lacuna Fund, with sort of people who are trying to gather data sets, you know, offer them funds so that people do that today. Yeah.
And then as a follow-up, as you kind of continue in your careers, I think in machine learning, there's a lot of pressure to move abroad, perhaps move to Europe or the United States to continue, like, for instance, to go to graduate school or to look for a job in industry or things like that. I think, which I think is especially difficult if you do work on something like African languages, where you also maybe want to stay local so that you can continue gathering data or doing the research. So how does that sort of work out? Like, has this been a challenge? Does it kind of complicate career decisions, or like what sort of research that you want to do? Or is it maybe getting better?
Yeah. Questions probably directed at me. Yeah, I'd say like I guess it's something that like a lot of people face, like having to like move at some point in your life for grad school, be the US, Europe, or yeah, whatsoever. And I mean, it's not easy. I would say it's not easy because you're like leaving like family, it's like being in a place or like getting used to a place for like 20 and something years, and then you have to move suddenly and then be in a new place and learn the culture and all that. Yeah. But besides that, like from the research like point of view, I'd say yeah, it could be hard. Actually, like when trying to like gather data. I guess that's why it's I guess that's where like the importance of like the community comes in, because we have like people like all over the place, so it's very I mean, it's not always easy, but I think like finding people that are still like in like these like areas that one can collaborate with could be very rewarding. So even if you cannot be there, I'm just finding people like in the local area, like could be people from like the community, could be even like having to like hire people, yeah, that could like help collect data, could be rewarding. Yeah, but it's definitely hard. I know like of projects that I've thought about of stuff of working on, and then it's like, oh, how do we collect this data? I'm not in Nigeria at this point, but yeah.
For me, I haven't had to move yet. Yeah. Of course, the fact that I still have engagements. Yeah, and most of my work. Okay, yeah, my first occupier, the gathering data. So yeah, the fact that I was in Nigeria at that moment, made it easier for me. But let's say I wanted to do that for another country, then it would have been harder for me to do that, right? Yeah. So yeah, maybe moving around is like a part of the job. Yeah. And I'll most likely be going for a PhD. Yeah, that means I would have to move, adjust to a new culture and environment, and I believe that might be stressful. Yeah, and maybe moving for work also is another valid reason to me. Yeah.
And then kind of another travel related question. So often in machine learning, we present our research at conferences, which with the pandemic have been mostly virtual, but now are becoming mostly in person, or at least seem to be moving in that direction more and more, which takes both time and costs. So I mean, not to say that there's really been anything good about the pandemic, but has the virtual conferences actually kind of helped you as an independent researcher? And then do you think like moving forward, you'll try to look for like other publication venues because of this, or start to travel more? What do you think it'll look like?
With respect to conferences, I mean, I have very strong opinions. I think it was obvious to me when I had a chance to travel to CVPR in person this year, and I had presented at ICML last year or as a hybrid conference. I think definitely it feels very gated in terms of the conference fees, but apart from that, I think, for example, CVPR, NeurIPS, and another conference are all happening in New Orleans, right? And the process to get visas to come in is so hard, right? So I think having conferences around the world will kind of open it up to a lot more people, and that was evident because when I went for to present at CVPR, I saw so many posters from authors from Asian and African backgrounds that couldn't get in because they didn't have the visas, and a lot of them were first-time authors. And I know how special it was for me because I had the opportunity, and I can't imagine that being taken away due to bureaucratic reasons. So I think having conferences around the world will also change that. I think going forward, hybrid has to be an option because that's the only way we can get more people in. And I think ICLR 2023 is happening in Rwanda, which is insane. And I think that is the start of good things to come.
For me, I yeah, the sequence to what Daniel said, I missed my first paper conference due to visa issues. So yeah, I can relate to what Daniel is saying. I mean, it's supposed to be a special feeling, right? Yeah, but my poster was there, but I wasn't there. Yeah, and well, aside the visa issue, personally, I felt I might prefer physical conferences to virtual conferences because I was on New Waves last year virtually, and while it was nice, it was a very good avenue to learn. Yeah, and the fact that everything is done virtually means that you can easily find different works. I mean, you don't have to move from one location to another location before you can find different work. So yeah, maybe that is nice, but in terms of collaboration or having those all-way discussion, yeah, maybe going for physical events might be better in that regard, yeah. But yeah, of course, the visa issue is always an issue. It's always there. Yeah, I mean, I'm planning on attending New Leaps later this year, and according to the U.S. Embassy disappointment date, the earliest date for me to secure an interview date is September 2024, yeah, which is crazy. And I'll probably have several workshop papers at New Leaps this year. Yeah, but the fact that what's the name? The fact that visa issues right there means that I might not be able to attend. Yeah. So yeah, maybe having the conferences around the world, places where it might be easier to get visa. Yeah, maybe that might be a useful solution in that regard.
Yeah, maybe I'll add.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna add that I hope that as has been said here, I hope that the hybrid format does continue, because for all the reasons stated, it increases accessibility so much. And I feel like maybe there's been a bit of like a rebound in terms of people who are making all the effort to travel are I can think like understandably getting and are able to travel. I think like understandably like some of the workshops I've attended recently, they actually like the virtual component was more or less canceled. It just didn't really occur in terms of the presentation of posters. And I understand why that happened, because I think that this was maybe the first time people were back together again, and that's where the organizers want to focus their energy. But I hope it smooths out again, and that we have a more balanced representation of virtual and in person. This is easy for me to say, of course, because I've never organized a workshop, but I think that would be really nice if that was possible.
Yeah, I don't have anything like unique to say aside what everybody has said. Like I share the same sentiments too. Yeah, I think like moving conferences around like would be really good for everybody. Yeah, and then definitely like I think hybrid conferences are very cool. I mean, sometimes like the virtual conference, like to be honest, are usually like less engaging. I've heard like of complaints from like people that have attended like conferences virtually where like you're just like in some bubble, and then every other person like is socializing like in person and stuff. But I think it's we have to like figure out how to like make hybrid conferences like more beneficial to like everybody, so both people attending physically and both people attending virtually.
All right, thank you. I think we have a few questions from the audience. Rakshith wants to know, how do you balance between independent research and doing a job on the side? So like he said, for example, if you are working for some organization, specifically, how do you do time management from that perspective?
Okay.
Go ahead, Tim.
Okay, yeah. So for me, actually, I'm an undergrad, yeah, but usually, if you're technically skilled as an undergrad, then you're probably combining that with work, yeah. So yeah, I work as an ML engineer, yeah, and then independent research means that you're not getting paid, to do your work, yeah, and usually you have to pay the bills, which means that you have to have maybe an engineering work to support that. Yeah. So for me, believe me, it's crazy actually. Yeah. And I remember last year when I was working on my science to speech paper, I had to resign from my formal job. Yeah. So I could have time to wrap up the work here. But this year, basically, finding balances for me is mostly, being clear in terms of communication. I mean, trying to make things clear between the people that you're working with at both sides here. well, my company knows that I do research. Yeah, so maybe I have a little bit of freedom more than is issue. Yeah. So around deadlines, for example, throughout last week, I mean, I was trying to meet the workshop deadline. So yeah, I couldn't work at all. I couldn't work at all, on my paid work, yeah, because I was focused on trying to get work done before the deadline. Yeah. It's also vice versa because at times you're very much occupied with your company work, which means you don't have enough time to dedicate to your independent research. Yeah. And initially these days I work with collaborators, and what they try to do is to try to communicate. Yeah. I mean, if I come with a meeting, I let them know in advance. Yeah. I mean, it's lots of I'm sorry and heartfelt apologies. Yeah. So and I let them know when I'm going to be busy for a period of time. So I think the biggest part of it for me is I communicate and let's socialize. Yeah.
Yeah, I think work-life balance, I think you can only get that if your work fulfills you in terms of what you want to do. I think as independent researchers, at least for me, I have terrible work-life balance right now because I'm doing independent research because I don't want to do it at some point in time, right? Like I want that to be my work. So it does bleed into the life aspect, but the way I keep myself motivated is that I'm thinking about it in terms of it's a temporary thing to get to a place where I will have that work-life balance, and then I don't have to do it on the side because I'm doing it at my 9 to 5. Yeah, that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I think similarly. I liked how you put that, because initially I do consider the work life. I do consider the independent research my hobby, so it is very fulfilling, and I gain a lot of satisfaction from it. But at the same time, it is also like a direction where I'd like to head in the future. So it's also like I see it kind of as an investment of my time. But it is really tricky, and I think it's one reason why like I currently like don't have like collaboration on my current research, is because I'm too undependable, and I'm not dependable in terms of meeting times. Like even my evening hours are not always open because I have 2 young children. So like I found that like I just can't like commit to a normal like schedule outside of the 9 to 5, and then the 9 to 5 is pretty occupied with work. So it's something that I'd like to like figure out a better system for, and I think probably like async collaboration tools is something that I need to like learn more about. I'm not answering this question very well, but I guess I'm kind of saying like it is a challenge. Like it's something that I definitely struggle with, and I think the main thing that is lost in it is sleep, which is sad.
That's great. There's another question, might be actually related. Neil wants to know that, well, generally, if you are not in an institution, it's very hard to find a topic that you want to go on a deep dive on. So I guess, how do you actually balance between going very deep on a topic and deciding whether that, and deciding final research goals of that? And whether you want to look at low-hanging fruits of that research or just go on a deep dive?
I think there are different ways to go about it. I'd say like if one is just starting out, I think it's usually good to like maybe like join ongoing projects to get experience and see how people develop ideas, like just like understanding like the whole pipeline from like start to finish, just contributing what you can, like helping when you can. I think that's helpful. And I also think that I mean, like we call them low-hanging fruits, but some of these works they have to be done. Like some of these things are like, I mean, we all say that okay, everybody's thinking about this just because it seems like the future work part of somebody's paper. But usually, like, some people would not, like, a lot of people will still not work on it because everybody's thinking the same thing. Yeah. So they're not always like low-hanging fruits. I think sometimes like this would be beneficial, and that might be like how to develop like good ideas to further to move the field forward. Like working on this like so-called like low-hanging fruits. That might be a way for you to even get experience I mean, you might find something that's wrong. You might find like interesting questions, like Daniel mentioned earlier. Why does this not work? Why does it break and all that? Yeah. So even trying to understand why things work could be like a way to like find new research ideas, and also in like developing in like finding ideas out of nothing or out of not working on something. I think survey papers are like a good way to understand like what's going on in the field, even though they're usually outdated as soon as they come out because somebody else is publishing something new like the next day. I think survey papers are like good ways to find out what people have done and where like the field is moving towards, challenges that people have faced. Yeah.
And would you say it's easy to find an advisor for, like, if you are not in an institution, Emily?
That's interesting. Like I feel like there's definitely a lot of mentorship opportunities. And like the MLC definitely has some that I'm aware of. And but an advisor, like someone you have like more of an ongoing relationship with, I haven't found anything like that. And I wonder if there is some sort of parallel type of role for independent researchers. I'm curious what other people have found.
Yeah, so interestingly, that's something we're trying to do at Cohere for AI. We are trying to have this kind of mentorship program, an ongoing mentorship program for independent researchers. But I just also wanted to know what you guys think about it.
I think not advice. I think maybe mentors. I think it's probably easy to find mentors because I guess if you're talking about advisors and talking about like, say like research, like professors or whatsoever, like a lot of them have like lots of students, yeah, that they're like struggling to advise to. They have like people have like lots of commitments, like surveys. They have to teach. They have to do all sorts of things. Yeah, but I think mentorship. I mean, that's something that's really helped me, and like multi projects I've worked on like independently, just talking to people that probably work in the field. Like if you find somebody's work interesting, you can like send them a message or I liked your work. I mean, that's how I started working with Sarah. Like I liked your work. I think it's interesting. I'm thinking of applying it to this like scenario. I'm thinking of working on this. I mean, usually like you probably don't immediately ask somebody to mentor you. You probably just want to have a chat with them. Yeah. And from there, like the relationship like develops. Yeah.
Yeah, I think asking someone to be your mentor just right out is a little scary for both parties because that gets you into a commitment. I think what I found to work for me is that I accept them as mentors, but they don't have to actually, agree to it. I think it's something that has to build organically, and that just happens with working together. Like Sarah right now is my advisor and my mentor, but she doesn't know that. So yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well, Daniel, she does now.
Adding to that, I'd probably say maybe applying. I mean, some of these independent, these research organizations to have programs, that are built to encourage newbies to get into research. So yeah, maybe in that aspect, you might have former mentors. I know of Fatima Fellowship, and then the new scholars program by C4 AI. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're having somebody that is assigned to you, officially assigned to you as a mentor. Yeah, so maybe that might be close to the way it works in schools. Yeah, for me also, my first ever research mentor was actually via a research program for newbies. Yeah. I think that was a step by Data Science Nigeria. Yeah, but I could say that yeah, just like Daniel's, most of my mentors these days, I mean, it's not always official. You know, I just sort of assume that, oh, you're mentoring me in this work, and yeah, I keep bugging you. You know, anytime I need help with my work. Yeah, I guess that's how it works. Yeah, so basically, yeah, that's how it is. And maybe at conferences, as an independent researcher, you're working in the field that you're new to, and maybe you sort of connect with somebody that has been working in that field for a while. Yeah, and then asking them if they would want to advise you on this work. I've done that once. Yeah, I think that's another form of mentorship. But of course, it's, they have the free will to leave, you know, go and stay as they wish. Yeah, so maybe it's not how it works in academia, because you probably stuck with your advisor till the end of your school period.
I will jump in because we're pretty much at time. So just before we close, I would like to ask the panelists to go around and share one short piece of advice for all of our attendees, and then we will close.
Yep, I can go. Advice for a person who's trying to break into ML research. This is something that I used. When I think of hard work, I think in terms of opportunities, right? So before I got into any of these groups, I was implementing papers because in my mind, I was like, there will be an opportunity where I will be expected to do this, and I want to be ready for that. So whenever you're working through something right now, think about it in terms of you're getting ready for your opportunity. It's coming, you just have to be ready for it. So right now I'm working independently, but I know at some point I'll have an opportunity to join a team, and at that point I need to be ready. So that's my advice.
This might be like overly specific advice, but I recently got a YouTube Plus subscription, so you don't have any of the ads. And you can, what is most important to it for me is you can close the screen. So it's no longer displaying the video, but you can listen to the audio. So I'm often just like wandering around listening to videos as I go about my day. And then if I hear something that's really important and I need to go back and see the slide or whatever's being presented, I'll just take a screenshot of the timestamp on my phone and I'll go back later. And you know, it's just amazing how much information professors are putting and other people are putting and creators are putting on YouTube and other resources. So yeah, so I just, you know, this is maybe the bigger message is like, just keep on learning, keep on finding what's interesting to you and seeking out the resources because they're there. But like specifically this YouTube Plus subscription has been great for me.
Yeah, just to add to what like every other person has said, yeah, I wanted to say that like it could be very daunting to start. Like it could be very daunting to start because like just seeing like people like pushing out papers, and then like there are days where you think that, oh, like am I even smart? Am I creative? And I just want you to know that like, or like understand that like some things come with exposure. Like the reason why you probably don't, the reason why you think you probably do not have like as great ideas as other people have is because of some sort of exposure. Sometimes there's some gap between like the knowledge you have and what you can do. So like things take time. With time, like things would definitely align with experience. Try not to compare yourself to other people. Yeah, like just like chart your own path. Yeah, everybody has their own path, and believe in yourself. Of course, I mean that's kind of generic, but I come from like a non-traditional background. I did my bachelor's in marine sciences, and I'm doing my PhD in computer science now. Yeah, so yeah, I guess we believe in hard work. Yeah.
I'm not usually good with advice, but this is mandatory, I guess I do one. Aside the very obvious advice that research is scary, and then you have to do a lot of stuff by yourself. I would probably advise in terms of collaborations. Yeah, it's very important that that communication is very clear. You know, when you're hosting it, when you're working with your collaborators. I've been in official collaborations before, and I've been in the ones that worked out very well. And I would say that the biggest factor is the communication aspect. You know, be clear on the roles that you're taking on. Your team. Yeah, and of course there might be roles that you didn't foresee initially, but might spring up as time goes on. Yeah, so you probably want to be clear in terms of communication, your time availability. Resentment can build up very quickly when you're working with other people, especially people from different backgrounds, demographics, and different ways of seeing life. So yeah, I always advise that you're very clear in terms of communication on your time availability, the times you're not available, the work designation. What you'll be working on during your collaboration.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much to the panelists for your time and for your great feedback and advice. We wish you the absolute best of luck in your continued research careers.